My finger's in the way.
You gonna see how it don't be that many people in this motherfucker.
Notification came. Popped up on my phone.
Gonna wait till people start coming in, filing in. You know, y'all shouldn't be late. Cause shit, where else you gonna be?
Got the fro out today, y'all. I'm sitting this side because my voice is
Back,
gone.
back,
It's
back,
it's going in and out
back.
because
No, it's not.
I'm sitting here sounding like a dang on.
It's
What's those people from Toy Story?
she acting
I
like
know.
that.
I promise you, I'm not.
Because soon as this live go
Like
off, I'm
like I
gonna
done,
rewatch it and you're
like
gonna hear her voice
like I done,
normal,
like I.
and then she's gonna switch it and say,
like,
"Ah, my voice." Like she
no.
doesn't sound like that. Like,
like I didn't just suck the balloon, a helium balloon. So,
what role you acting for?
but I'm not acting.
I'm gonna need you to talk normal in this one. Cause you need to be sitting in this seat. They don't need to hear you if you sound like that.
That's why we sit right here like this. So when
I didn't know that was the reason. You said that soon as the camera cut
no,
off.
I did say that. I said I want to sit right here because I don't want to talk loud, so my voice won't
You need to
sound
talk
funny.
regular.
I mean, I am
It's
talking regular.
back. Okay, keep doing it. The whole ooh. I hope this be a 3 hour live of you just talking like that. So when you rewatch the video, you're like, why was I sounding like that?
No, because I can't help it. Babe, you want me to start singing right now? What did you tell me yesterday when I was singing?
You was acting.
No, I was not.
That's what I see it as. I heard your voice. Anybody who came in here first, they gonna hear you talking normal. Then you gonna.
Whatever, babe.
It's too
Whatever.
late. You got caught.
No, I
It's
didn't
on
because this is
camera.
the truth. Watch, we gonna watch it. Once we get done, we gonna go in the room and we gonna watch it.
Actually, it's probably gonna be a live with just me, honestly, because that voice right there is not working for me. Like, even though we listened to an audiobook tonight, this is not about us having one of those random conversations. We listened to an audiobook called Think and Grow Rich. We're not gonna finish the whole book because that's an 11 hour like time. So make sure you give this video a thumbs up. Make sure you comment, like church. Let us know where you from, where you record from. We don't need you to show your tablet, mama. But let's
She
go.
like I see myself. This is a good book.
This is one of my favorite books. This shit started tripping. Wow. Wow, the devil is working.
The only thing about this book is my sister say she can't take the voice. His
Think
voice.
and Grow Rich.
Well, not
Teaching
this
for the
one,
first
but the
time
other one.
the famous Andrew Carnegie formula.
You
for
like your
money making,
voice?
based
What are you
upon
talking about?
13
Can't take your
proven
voice.
steps to riches. Organized through
Hey,
25
what's up,
years
Jeffrey?
of
What's up?
research
What's
and
up? What's up?
collaboration of more than 500 distinguished men of
Me and
great
Jeffrey
wealth,
go way
who
back
proved by their own
middle school.
achievements that this philosophy is practical. By Napoleon Hill, author of The Law of Success Philosophy, published by the Ralston Society, 1938, Meridian, Connecticut. Copyright 1937 by Napoleon Hill. All rights reserved.
So this book was
Tributes to
made
the
in
author
1937.
from great American leaders. Think and Grow Rich was 25 years in the making. It is Napoleon Hill's newest book based upon his famous law of success philosophy. His work and writings have been praised by great leaders in finance, education, politics, government. Supreme Court of the United States, Washington, D.C. Dear Mr. Hill, I have now had an opportunity to finish reading your Law of Success textbooks, and I
Alright,
wish
there's
to
some
express
extra
my
shit, so
appreciation
we
of
gonna
the
just
splendid
kinda
work
skip
you have
past
done in
this.
the organ.
Because that ain't part of the book.
They put
Chapter
their ads
1.
in there.
Introduction. The man who thought his way into partnership with Thomas A. Edison. Truly, thoughts are things, and powerful things at that. when they are mixed with definiteness of purpose, persistence, and a burning desire for their translation into riches or other material objects. A little more than 30 years ago, Edwin C. Barnes discovered how true it is that men really do think and grow rich. His discovery did not come about at one sitting. It came little by little, beginning with a burning desire to become a business associate of the great Edison. One of the chief characteristics of Barnes' desire was that it was definite. He wanted to work with Edison, not for him. Observe carefully the description of how he went about translating his desire into reality, and you will have a better understanding of the 13 principles which lead to riches. When this desire, or impulse of thought, first flashed into his mind, he was in no position to act upon it. Two difficulties stood in his way. He did not know Mr. Edison, and he did not have enough money to pay his railroad fare to Orange, New Jersey. These difficulties were sufficient to have discouraged the majority of men from making any attempt to carry out the desire. But this was no ordinary desire. He was so determined to find a way to carry out his desire that he finally decided to travel by blind baggage rather than be defeated. To the uninitiated, this means that he went to East Orange on a freight train. He presented himself at Mr. Edison's laboratory and announced he had come to go into business with the inventor. In speaking of the first meeting between Barnes and Edison years later, Mr. Edison said, "He stood there before me looking like an ordinary tramp, but there was something in the expression of his face which conveyed the impression that he was determined to get what he had come after. I had learned from years of experience with men that when a man really desires a thing so deeply that he is willing to stake his entire future on a single turn of the wheel in order to get it, he is sure to win. I gave him the opportunity he asked for, because I saw he had made up his mind to stand by until he succeeded. Subsequent events proved that no mistake was made." Just what young Barnes said to Mr. Edison on that occasion was far less important than that which he thought. Edison himself said so. It could not have been the young man's appearance which got him his start in the Edison office, for that was definitely against him. It was what he thought that counted. If the significance of this statement could be conveyed to every person who reads it, there would be no need for the remainder of this book. Barnes did not get his partnership with Edison on his first interview. He did get a chance to work in the Edison offices at a very nominal wage, doing work that was unimportant to Edison, but most important to Barnes, because it gave him an opportunity to display his merchandise where his intended partner could see it. Months went by. Apparently nothing happened to bring the converted goal which Barnes had set up in his mind as his definite major purpose. But something important was happening in Barnes's mind. He was constantly intensifying his desire to become the business associate of Edison. Psychologists have correctly said that when one is truly ready for a thing, it puts in its appearance. Barnes was ready for a business association with Edison. Moreover, he was determined to remain ready until he got that which he was seeking. He did not say to himself, "Ah, well, what's the use? I guess I'll change my mind and try for a salesman's job." But he did say, "I came here to go into business with Edison, and I'll accomplish this end if it takes the remainder of my life."
Say bye,
He meant it.
Say bye. Say bye.
What a different story men would have to tell if only they would adopt a definite purpose and stand by that purpose until it had time to become an all-consuming obsession. Maybe young Barnes did not know it at the time, but his bulldog determination, his persistence in standing back of a single desire, was destined to mow down all opposition and bring him the opportunity he was seeking. When the opportunity came, it appeared in a different form, and from a different direction than Barnes had expected. That is one of the tricks of opportunity. It has a sly habit of slipping in by the back door, and often it comes disguised in the form of misfortune or temporary defeat. Perhaps this is why so many fail to recognize opportunity. Mr. Edison had just perfected a new office device known at that time as the Edison dictating machine. now the
You're just
Ediphone.
gonna slide out.
His salesmen were not enthusiastic over the machine.
You ain't gotta get up.
They did not believe it could be sold without great effort. Barnes saw his opportunity. It had crawled in quietly, hidden in a queer-looking machine which interested no one but Barnes and the inventor. Barnes knew he could sell the Edison dictating machine. He suggested this to Edison and promptly got his chance. He did sell the machine. In fact, he sold it so successfully that Edison gave him a contract to distribute and market it all over the nation. Out of that business association grew the slogan, "Made by Edison and installed by Barnes." The business alliance has been in operation for more than 30 years. Out of it, Barnes has made himself rich in money, but he has done something infinitely greater. He has proved that one really may think and grow rich.
I'm coming, baby.
How much actual cash the original desire of Barnes has been worth to him, I have no way of knowing.
See you later, Mom.
Perhaps it has brought him $2 or $3 million, but the amount, whatever it is, becomes insignificant when compared with the greater asset he acquired in the form of definite knowledge that an intangible impulse of thought can be transmuted into its physical counterpart by the application of known principles. Barnes literally thought himself
We
into a
listening to
partnership with the
Think and
great
Grow Rich,
Edison.
of course. If you
He thought himself into a
seen the title
fortune.
of the video,
He
so.
had nothing to start with except the capacity to know what he wanted and the determination to stand by that desire until he realized it. He had no money to begin with. He had but little education. He had no influence, but he did have initiative, faith, and the will to win. With these intangible forces, he made himself #1 man with the greatest inventor who ever lived. Now let us look at a different situation and study a man who had plenty of tangible evidence of
Make sure y'all
riches,
get
but
his
lost
video a
it
thumbs up.
because he stopped 3 feet short of the
Like
goal
church,
he
let
was
us know
seeking.
who in here. Shout
3
out to
feet from gold.
my boy Jeffrey.
One of the most common causes of failure is the habit of quitting when one is overtaken by temporary defeat. Every person is guilty of this mistake at one time or another. An uncle of R.U. Darby was caught by the gold fever in the gold rush days and went west to dig and grow rich. He had never heard that more gold has been mined from the brains of men than has ever been taken from the earth. He staked a claim and went to work with pick and shovel. The going was hard, but his lust for gold was definite. After weeks of labor, he was rewarded by the discovery of the shining ore. He needed machinery to bring the ore to the surface. Quietly, he covered up the mine, retraced his footsteps to his home in Williamsburg, Maryland, told his relatives and a few neighbors of the strike. They got together money for the needed machinery, had it shipped. The uncle and Darby went back to work the mine. The first car of ore was mined and shipped to a smelter. The returns proved they had one of the richest mines in Colorado. A few more cars of that ore would clear the debts. Then would come the big killing and profits. Down went the drills, up went the hopes of Darby and Uncle. Then something
Make
happened.
sure y'all stay
The vein of
hydrated.
gold ore disappeared.
I need to
It
drink
had come
more
to the
water,
end of the
so.
rainbow, and the pot of gold was no longer
A
there.
lot of water is
They
bad
drilled
as
on,
fuck, so.
desperately trying to pick
I
up the
ain't
vein
doing
again,
myself no
all
favor.
to no avail. Finally, they decided to quit. They sold the machinery to a junk man for a few $100s and took the train back home. Some junk men are dumb, but not this one. He called in a mining engineer to look at the mine and do a little calculating. The engineer advised that the project had failed because the owners were not familiar with fault lines. His calculations showed that the vein would be found just 3 feet from where the Darbys had stopped drilling. That is exactly where it was found. The junk man took millions of dollars in ore from the mine because he knew enough to seek expert counsel before giving up. Most of the money which went into the machinery was procured through the efforts of R.U. Darby, who was then a very young man. The money came from his relatives and neighbors because of their faith in him. He paid back every dollar of it, although he was years in doing so. Long afterward, Mr. Darby recouped his loss many times over when he made the discovery that desire can be transmuted into gold. The discovery came after he went into the business of selling life insurance. Remembering that he had lost a huge fortune because he stopped 3 feet from gold, Darby profited by the experience in his chosen work by the simple method of saying to himself, I stopped 3 feet from gold, but I will never stop because men say no when I ask them to buy insurance. Darby is one of a
Learned
small
his
group
lesson,
of fewer than
for
50
sure.
men who sell more than $1 million
Some people don't
in
learn
life
their lesson.
insurance annually. He owes his stickability to the lesson he learned from his quitability in the gold mining business. Before success comes in any man's life, he is sure to meet with much temporary defeat and perhaps some failure. When defeat overtakes a man, the easiest and most logical thing to do is to quit. That is exactly what the majority of men do. More than 500 of the most successful men this country has ever known told the author their greatest success came just one step beyond the point at which defeat had overtaken them. Failure is a trickster with a keen sense of irony and cunning. It takes great delight in tripping one when success is almost within reach. A 50-cent lesson in persistence. Shortly after Mr. Darby received his degree from the University of Hard Knocks and had decided to profit by his experience in the gold mining business, he had the good fortune to be present on an occasion that proved to him that no does not necessarily mean no. One afternoon he was helping his uncle grind wheat in an old-fashioned mill. The uncle operated a large farm on which a number of colored sharecrop farmers lived. Quietly, the door was opened and a small colored child, the daughter of a tenant, walked in and took her place.
Oh, my bad.
Large farm on which a number of colored sharecrop farmers lived. Quietly, the door was opened and a small colored child, the daughter of a tenant, walked in and took her place near the door. The uncle looked up, saw the child, and barked at her roughly. What do you want? Meekly, the child replied, My mammy say send her 50 cents. I'll not do it, the uncle retorted. Now run on home. Yassa, the child replied, but she did not move. The uncle went ahead with his work, so busily engaged that he did not pay enough attention to the child to observe that she did not leave. When he looked up and saw her still standing there, he yelled at her, I told you to go on home. Now go or I'll take a switch to you. The little girl said, Yassa, but she did not budge an inch. The uncle dropped a sack of grain he was about to pour into the mill hopper, picked up a barrel stave, and started toward the child with an expression on his face that indicated trouble. Darby held his breath. He was certain he was about to witness a murder. He knew his uncle had a fierce temper. He knew that the colored children were not supposed to defy white people in that part of the country. When the uncle reached the spot where the child was standing, she quickly stepped forward, one step, looked up into his eyes, and screamed at the top of her shrill voice, My mammy's got to have that 50 cents. The uncle stopped, looked at her for a minute, then slowly laid the barrel stave on the floor, put his hand in his pocket, took out $50, and gave it to her. The child took the money and slowly backed toward the door, never taking her eyes off the man whom she had just conquered. After she had gone, the uncle sat down on a box and looked out the window into space for more than 10 minutes. He was pondering with awe over the whipping he had just taken. Mr. Darby, too, was doing some thinking. That was the first time in all his experience that he had seen a colored child deliberately master an adult white person. How did she do it? What happened to his uncle that caused him to lose his fierceness and become as docile as a lamb? What strange power did this child use that made her master over her superior? These and other similar questions flashed into Darby's mind, but he did not find the answer until years later when he told me the story.
If you're new to the live, we're
Strangely,
listening to
the
Think
story
and
of this
Grow Rich
unusual
audiobook.
experience was told to the author in the old mill on the very spot where the uncle took his whipping. Strangely, too, I had devoted nearly a quarter of a century to the study of the power which enabled an ignorant, illiterate colored child to conquer an intelligent man. As we stood there in that musty old mill, Mr. Darby repeated the story of the unusual conquest, and finished by asking, What can you make of it? What strange power did that child use that so completely whipped my uncle? The answer to his question will be found in the principles described in this book. The answer is full and complete. It contains details and instructions sufficient to enable anyone to understand and apply the same force which the little child accidentally stumbled upon. Keep your mind alert, and you will observe exactly what strange power came to the rescue of the child. You will catch a glimpse of this power in the next chapter. Somewhere in the book you will find an idea that will quicken your receptive powers and place at your command, for your own benefit, this same irresistible power. The awareness of this power may come to you in the first chapter, or it may flash into your mind in some subsequent chapter. It may come in the form of a single idea, or it may come in the nature of a plan or a purpose.
You can hear
Again,
it,
it may cause you to go back into your past experiences of failure or defeat and bring to the surface some lesson by which you can regain all that you lost through defeat. After I had described to Mr. Darby the power unwittingly used by the little colored child, he quickly retraced his 30 years of experience as a life insurance salesman and frankly acknowledged that his success in that field was due in no small degree to the lesson he had learned from the child. Mr. Darby pointed out, every time a prospect tried to bow me out without buying, I saw that child standing there in the old mill, her big eyes glaring in defiance, and I said to myself, I've got to make this sale. The better portion of all sales I've made were made after people had said no. He recalled, too, his mistake in having stopped only 3 feet from gold. But, he said, that experience was a blessing in disguise. It taught me to keep on keeping on, no matter how hard the going may be, a lesson I needed to learn before I could succeed in anything. This story of Mr. Darby and his uncle, the colored child, and the gold mine doubtless will be read by hundreds of men who make their living by selling life insurance, and to all of these the author wishes to offer the suggestion that Darby owes to these 2 experiences in his ability to sell more than $1 million of life insurance every year. Life is strange and often imponderable. Both the successes and the failures have their roots in simple experiences. Mr. Darby's experiences were commonplace and simple enough, yet they held the answer to his destiny in life. Therefore, they were as important to him as life itself.
Subscribe, hit that subscribe button.
He profited by these 2 dramatic experiences because he analyzed them and found the lesson they taught. But what of the man who has neither the time nor the inclination to study failure in search of knowledge that may lead to success? Where and how is he to learn the art of converting defeat into stepping stones to opportunity? In the answer to these questions, this book was written. The answer called for a description of 13 principles, but remember, as you read, the answer you may be seeking to the questions which have caused you to ponder over the strangeness of life may be found in your own mind, through some idea, plan, or purpose which may spring into your mind as you read. One sound idea is all that one needs to achieve success. The principles described in this book contain the best and the most practical of all that is known concerning the ways and means of creating useful ideas. Before we go any further in our approach to the description of these principles, we believe you are entitled to receive this important suggestion. When riches begin to come, they come so quickly in such great abundance that one wonders where they have been hiding during all those lean years. This is an astounding statement, and all the more so when we take into consideration the popular belief that riches come only to those who work hard and long. When you begin to think and grow rich, you'll observe that riches begin with a state of mind, with definiteness of purpose, with little or no hard work. You and every other person ought to be interested in knowing how to acquire that state of mind which will attract riches. I spent 25 years in research, analyzing more than 25,000 people, because I too wanted to know how wealthy men become that way. Without that research, this book could not have been written. Here, take notice of a very significant truth, viz. The business depression started in 1929 and continued on to an all-time record of destruction until sometime after President Roosevelt entered office. Then the depression began to fade into nothingness. Just as an electrician in a theater raises the lights so gradually that darkness is transmuted into light before you realize it, so did the spell of fear in the minds of the people gradually fade away and become faith. Observe very closely as soon as you master the principles of this philosophy, and begin to follow the instructions for applying those principles, your financial status will begin to improve, and everything you touch will begin to transmute itself into an asset for your own benefit. Impossible? Not at all. One of the main weaknesses of mankind is the average man's familiarity with the word impossible. He knows all the rules which will not work. He knows all the things which cannot be done. This book was written for those who seek the rules which have made others successful and are willing to stake everything on those rules. A great many years ago, I purchased a fine dictionary. The first thing I did with it was to turn to the word impossible and neatly clip it out of the book. That would not be an unwise thing for you to do. Success comes to those who become success conscious. Failure comes to those who indifferently allow themselves to become failure conscious.
Make sure you get his
The
video
object
thumbs
of
up
this
if you
book
haven't
is to
already.
help all who seek it to learn the art of changing their minds from failure consciousness to success
Hey, and
consciousness.
if y'all got some book
Another
recommendations,
weakness found
hey,
in
by all
altogether
means,
too many
comment
people
what books
is
you
the
read,
habit
what
of
books you want to
measuring
hear.
everything and
Right.
everyone by their
And I'm gonna
own
try to find
impressions
that
and
book.
beliefs. Some who will read this will believe that no one can think and grow rich. They cannot think in terms of riches because their thought habits have been steeped in poverty, want, misery, failure, and defeat. These unfortunate people remind me of the prominent Chinese who came to America to be educated in American ways. He attended the University of Chicago. One day, President Harper met this young Oriental on the campus, stopped to chat with him for a few minutes, and asked what had impressed him as being the most noticeable characteristic of the American people. "Why," the Chinaman exclaimed, "the queer slant of your eyes. Your eyes are off slant." What do we say about the Chinese? We refuse to believe that which we do not understand. We foolishly believe that our own limitations are the proper measurement of limitations. Sure, the other fellow's eyes are off slant because they are not the same as our
In the
own.
background.
Millions of people look
Might
at
have
the
to go
achievements
cuss
of
their
Henry
ass out.
Ford after
They'll
he
be
has
quiet.
arrived and envy him because of his good fortune or luck or genius or whatever it is that they credit for Ford's fortune. Perhaps one person in every 100,000 knows the secret of Ford's success, and those who do know are too modest or too reluctant to speak of it because of its simplicity. A single transaction will illustrate the secret perfectly. A few years back, Ford decided to produce his now famous V8 motor. He chose to build an engine with the entire 8 cylinders cast in one block and instructed his engineers to produce a design for the engine. The design was placed on paper, but the engineers agreed to a man that it was simply impossible to cast an 8-cylinder gas engine block in one piece. Ford said, "Produce it anyway." "But," they replied, "it's impossible." "Go ahead," Ford commanded, "and stay on the job until you succeed, no matter how much time is required." The engineers went ahead. There was nothing else for them to do if they were to remain on the Ford staff. 6 months went by, nothing happened. Another 6 months passed, and still nothing happened. The engineers tried every conceivable plan to carry out the orders, but the thing seemed out of the question. Impossible! At the end of the year, Ford checked with his engineers, and again they informed him that they had found no way to carry out his orders. "Go right ahead," said Ford. "I want it, and I'll have it." They went ahead, and then, as if by a stroke of magic, the secret was discovered. The Ford determination had won once more. This story may not be described with minute accuracy, but the sum and substance of it is correct. Deduce from it, you who wish to think and grow rich, the secret of the Ford millions, if you can. You will not have to look very far. Henry Ford is a success because he understands and applies the principles of success. One of these is desire, knowing what one wants. Remember
know
this
what you
Ford
want
story
in
as you
life
read
before you
and
can
pick
get
out
it.
the lines in which the secret of his stupendous achievement has been described. If you can do this, if you can lay your finger on the particular group of principles which made Henry Ford rich, you can equal his achievements in almost any calling for which you are suited. You are the master of your fate, the captain of your soul, because when Henry wrote the prophetic lines, "I am the master of my fate, I am the captain of my soul," He should have informed us that we are the masters of our fate, the captains of our souls, because we have the power to control our thoughts. He should have told us that the ether in which this little earth floats, in which we move and have our being, is a form of energy moving at an inconceivably high rate of vibration, and that the ether is filled with a form of universal power which adapts itself to the nature of the thoughts we hold
If
in our
y'all start to
minds
get like
and
different
influences
ideas
us
when
in
this when you
natural
listen to
ways
this
to
book, make
transmute
sure
our
you write
thoughts
it
into their
down,
physical
or
equivalent.
if you can get it in
If
your
the poet had
notes,
told us of
put it
this
down,
great
like, cause
truth,
shit,
we
you'll
would know
forget that
why
thought.
it is that we are the masters of our fate, the captains of our souls. He should have told us with great emphasis that this power makes no attempt to discriminate between the destructive thoughts
If
and the
you new to the
constructive
chat,
thoughts,
give it a
that it
thumbs
will
up.
urge us to translate into physical reality thoughts of poverty just as quickly as it will influence us to act upon thoughts of riches. He should have told us, too, that our brains become magnetized with the dominating thoughts which we hold in our minds. And by means with which no man is familiar, these magnets attract to us the forces, the people, the circumstances of life which harmonize with the nature of our dominating thoughts. He should have told us that before we can accumulate riches in great abundance, we must magnetize our minds with intense desire for riches, that we must become money conscious until the desire for money drives us to create definite plans for acquiring it. But being a poet and not a philosopher, Hindley contented himself by stating a great truth in poetic form, leaving those who followed him to interpret the philosophical meaning of his lines. Little by little, the truth has unfolded itself until it now appears certain that the principles described in this book hold the secret of mastery over our economic fate. We are now ready to examine the first of these principles. Maintain a spirit of open-mindedness, and remember as you read, they are the invention of no one man. The principles were gathered from the life experiences of more than 500 men who actually accumulated riches in huge amounts, men who began in poverty with but little education, without influence. The principles worked for these men. You can put them to work for your own enduring benefit. You will find it easy, not hard, to do. Before you read the next chapter, I want you to know that it conveys factual information which might easily change your entire financial destiny, as it has so definitely brought the changes of stupendous proportions to two people described. I want you to know also that the relationship between these two men and myself is such that I could have taken no liberties with the facts, even if I had wished to do so. One of them has been my closest personal friend for almost 25 years, and the other is my own son. The unusual success of these two men, success which they generously accredit to the principle described in the next chapter, more than justifies this personal reference as a means of emphasizing the far-flung power of this principle. Almost 15 years ago, I delivered the commencement address at Salem College, Salem, West Virginia. I emphasized the principle described in the next chapter with so much intensity that one of the members of the graduating class definitely appropriated it and made it a part of his own philosophy.
Salute.
The young man is
Trayvon.
now a member of
Salute.
Congress and an important factor in the present administration. Just before this book went to the publisher, he
We're
wrote me a
gonna, like,
letter in which he so clearly stated his opinion of the principle.
After this chapter go off, we're gonna do a little conversation, like get a little dialogue going. Like, I know there's people in the chat, so like make sure you, like, I'm trying to make this like so we can fucking share. Like, it's things that I've heard in this book that made me think of certain things that you heard something, it made you think something different. Like, so hey, I'm trying to get this mug like to where everybody tuning in, everybody tapped in, everybody learning something from this. Like, I don't know how many times I done read this book or listened to this book. Like, since 2018 when I discovered it, or probably 2017 when I discovered Think and Grow Rich. I don't know how many times I done read it. Like, so, but it's always something, a new idea that pops up when I reread it. So hey, I know I'm not the only person who like that. So hey, just if you're here, let me know. Shit, like church, Let me know where you from. Where you tuning in from? You ain't say your name because I already see it. But
Line in the next chapter that have chosen to publish his letter as
for
an
sure, for
introduction to
sure.
that chapter. It gives you an idea of the rewards to come. My dear Napoleon, my service as a member of Congress having given me an insight into the problems of men and women, I am writing to offer a suggestion which may become helpful to thousands of worthy people. With apologies, I must state that the suggestion, if acted upon, will mean several years of labor and responsibility for you, but I am enheartened to make the suggestion because I know your great love for rendering useful service. In 1922, you delivered the commencement address at Salem College when I was a member of the graduating class. In that address, you planted in my mind an idea which has been responsible for the opportunity I now have to serve the people of my state, and will be responsible in a very large measure for whatever success I may have in the future. The suggestion I have in mind is that you put into a book the sum and substance of the address you delivered at Salem College, and in that way give the people of America an opportunity to profit by your many years of experience in association with the men who, by their greatness, have made America the richest nation on earth. I recall, as though it were yesterday, the marvelous description you gave of the method by which Henry Ford, with but little schooling, without a dollar, with no influential friends, rose to great heights. I made up my mind then, even before you had finished your speech, that I would make a place for myself, no matter how many difficulties I had to surmount. Thousands of young people will finish their schooling this year, and within the next few years, every one of them will be seeking just such a method of practical encouragement as the one I received from you. They will want to know where to turn, what to do to get started in life. You can tell them because you have helped to solve the problems of so many, many people. If there is any possible way that you can afford to render so great a service, may I offer the suggestion that you include with every book one of your personal analysis charts, in order that the purchaser of the book may have the benefit of a complete self-inventory, indicating, as you indicated to me years ago, exactly what is standing in the way of success. Such a service as this, providing the readers of your book with a complete, unbiased picture of their faults and their virtues, would mean to them the difference between success and failure. The service would be priceless. Millions of people are now facing the problem of staging a comeback because of the Depression, and I speak from personal experience when I say I know these earnest people would welcome the opportunity to tell you their problems and to receive your suggestions for the solution. You know the problems of those who face the necessity of beginning all over again. There are thousands of people in America today who would like to know how they can convert ideas into money. People who must start at scratch without finances and recoup their losses. If anyone can help them, you can. If you publish the book, I would like to own the first copy that comes from the press, personally autographed by you. With best wishes, believe me, cordially yours, Jennings Randolph. Chapter 2.
All right, so like to anybody who came in like later on, it not have been from the jump. We listening to Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. Now this book was written in 1930 something. It was finished. Like it took him 25 years to write this one book. Like so, it took 500 of the wealthiest man in these times, as he mentioned, Henry Ford and like Thomas Edison. Like, but what it's getting to is like all these men started with nothing. Like they had nothing. So if it, I think it may mention the Rockefellers or like some other people, like some more prominent people. Like, so when you look, you say, "Oh, these old rich man, white man, they stole it. They did what they had to do to get what they seen, what they wanted, what they thought for themselves." So me, I don't be mad at what somebody else got, I don't, or how they acquired whatever they acquired. Like, cause I know it started with a thought first. Like, so, and to get rich, like you don't have like me. I started with $0 in my account. Like literally, I started with $0 when I was listening to this book. I was living in Hobart, Indiana, around like this close to Gary, Indiana, my hometown. But I was heard about the law of attraction from my brother. I read this book called The Secret. I watched the documentary. Then at that point, I was hungry for information. Like so, Napoleon Hill was the next person who popped up. So I started watching his videos. Like it's crazy how he was making videos like this in the 1930s. It's black and white videos where he just giving game. Like so, at that point, like I'm like, oh shit, I need to pay attention to these old white men. I don't need to be keep paying attention to like somebody that's alive today, like, cause they ain't really got shit. Like I said, it took 25 years to make this book, and it's because of 500 of the wealthiest men that had lived at the time. So these men had over 100 millions of dollars. They tell the first story, like talk about how the dude was searching for gold, but gave up 3 feet from the gold, but he learned his lesson. Like so, hey, you can get rich. I know I'm about to get rich. I'm already there. Like shit, it's just a matter of time. Like, cause I put my work in. Like shit, when it was 2017, like I said, I'm gonna be rich. I'm gonna be wealthy, and I know it's not gonna happen overnight. Cause I was listening to Think and Grow Rich. Like so, it prepared my mindset to like not give up so easy. Like and it made me focus on my goals. It made me focus on thinking positive, like having a positive mindset. That's why I created Positive Minds Only, listening to Napoleon Hill, Earl Nightingale, like it's a few other people like Bob Proctor who just passed away. Recipes Bob Proctor. Like I was listening to every single day when I had stopped listening to rap. I stopped watching TV. I wasn't listening to nothing but Earl Night, all of this type shit. 30 days in a row, I did that. Like, so it trained me to think more positive.
Desire, the starting point of all achievement, the first step toward riches. When Edwin C. Barnes climbed down from the freight train in Orange, New Jersey, more than 30 years ago, he may have resembled a tramp, but his thoughts were those of a king. As he made his way from the railroad tracks to Thomas A. Edison's office, his mind was at work. He saw himself standing in Edison's presence. He heard himself asking Mr. Edison for an opportunity to carry out the one consuming obsession of his life,
You know what the fuck
a
it
burning
is.
desire to become
Hey,
the business
shout out for
associate
my
of
guy
the great
Nissan
inventor.
coming through. That's my real bro.
Barnes' desire
I gotta
was
pause
not
the
a
book.
hope.
Hold on. I gotta
It was
pause
not
it.
a wish. It was a keen
Cause
pulse.
this guy Nissan is one of the realest you will ever meet. Like you will ever meet in your life. I met him in Las Vegas. Me and my wife shopping. He owns a store. Like so, if you ever in Vegas, you go. Oh, any women ever come to Vegas? Store called Just. It's a town square mall. I think Las Vegas. $10. Everything $10 or less, and it's got the. My wife love that place. Like so, Nissan. Shout out to my bro Nissan. Like really a real one. Like so. Hey, you already like I said, you know what the fuck it is. Like, and this is not like just because he just popped up in. Like, I didn't even know he was gonna show up tonight. So, but he said, "Hey, let me subscribe, and I'm gonna show up." Like, so, hey, he invited me to my first rave party. I had used to always wanted to go to like raves before I moved to Vegas. Like, even though I was heavy on rap, R&B, like, but I always loved the energy of like a rave. Like, so I came to Vegas. He be throwing a party, so he invited me to my first rave. Probably I don't know how many times I'd have kicked it with my brother, but definitely a real one. And like I said, he got his own business, like so. Obviously, a positive thinking individual, like so. I don't think too highly of it, like a lot of people. Like that's one person who I think very highly of. Like, and it's
Desire
well
which
deserved.
transcended everything else. It was definite. The desire was not new when he approached Edison. It had been Barnes's dominating desire for a long time. In the beginning, when the desire first appeared in his mind, it may have been, probably was, only a wish. But it was no mere wish when he appeared before Edison with it. A few years later, Edwin C. Barnes again stood before Edison in the same office where he first met the inventor. This time, his desire had been translated into reality. He was in business with Edison. The dominating dream of his life had become a reality. Today, people who know Barnes envy him because of the break life yielded him. They see him in the days of his triumph without taking the trouble to investigate the cause of his success.
Exactly.
Barnes succeeded because he chose a definite goal, placed all of his energy, all of his willpower, all of his effort, everything back of that goal. He did not become the partner of Edison the day he arrived. He was content to start in the most menial work as long as it provided an opportunity to take even one step toward his cherished goal. 5 years passed before the chance he had been seeking made its appearance. During all those years, not one ray of hope, not one promise of attainment of his desire had been held out to him. To everyone except himself, he appeared only another cog in the Edison business wheel. But in his own mind, he was the partner of Edison every minute of the time, from the very day that he first went to work there. It is a remarkable illustration of the power of a definite desire. Barnes won his goal because he wanted to be a business associate of Mr. Edison more than he wanted anything else. He created a plan by which to attain that purpose.
Like whatever it
But
is,
he
have a
burned
definite
all
goal
bridges
and just
behind
go.
him.
Believe
He
it,
stood
think
by
it,
his
it's gonna come,
desire
it's gonna
until
happen.
it became the dominating obsession of his life, and finally, a fact. When he went to Orange, he did not say to himself, I will try to...
Like when now that I think about it, like Think and Grow Rich is like the basis. It's like my foundation, like just a positive and undoing brand. Like this book really changed my life. Like I can't stress it enough, like how much this book changed my life. Nobody ever told me to read it. Like I ain't had no mentors like showing me the way. But like I said, once I learned about the law of attraction, I watched that movie, The Secret. I'm like, I need more, like, cause it fed, like, it was feeding my soul, it was feeding my spirit. So, came across this book, Think and Grow Rich, like, and he got so many other books. Like, he ain't just wrote one book, like, and this man like started with nothing, like, and he was working for the president, like, for free, like, for years. He like, I don't want you to pay me, cause I'm working on my own stuff. I'm building my own stuff. So he gave me like the mindset to no matter how long it take, just keep working on your shit. You keep working towards your definite goal. Eventually, it's gonna work out. Now things ain't taking 25 years to manifest, but I'm pretty sure he was getting blessed along his journey. Like so, like this Think and Grow Rich really changed my life. Like that's really how I think, how I believe. Like I know because I done manifested so much stuff off this book. Like so, I know I'm rich. I'm already rich. Like I'm already wealthy. It ain't even about the money that's in your bank account. Like it's about your mind. Is your mind healthy? Do you think positive? Do you think straight? Do you control your mind? Like most people don't control their thinking. Like so, what they manifest into their life? Because we all manifest our life. Like whether you believe in the law of attraction or not, whether you think God gave you everything you wanted, nah, you thought it first. It came into your life. It's like so good, bad, ugly, whatever. Like that's what you wanted. Like so, Think and Grow Rich is definitely like my favorite. Like between Earl Nightingale's The Stranger's Secret and Think and Grow Rich, like, but this one got way more game in it. Earl Nightingale's The Stranger's Secret, that's a quick listen, that's a quick read. Like so, this one got hella game in it, and that's why Earl Nightingale made that. So he was inspired by it.
Use Edison to give me a job of some sort. He said, I will see Edison and put him on notice that I have come to go into business with him. He did not say, I will work there for a few months, and if I get no encouragement, I will quit and get a job somewhere else. He did say, I will start anywhere. I will do anything Edison tells me to do, but before I am through, I will be his associate. He did not say, I will keep my eyes open for another opportunity in case I fail to get what I want in the Edison organization. He said,
Make sure you get
there
his
is but
video
one
thumbs
thing
up
in
if
this
you're new
world
to the
that I am determined to
live.
have, and that is a business
If you're not
association
already
with
subscribed,
Thomas
hit that
A.
subscribe
Edison.
button.
I will burn all bridges behind me and stake my entire future on my ability to get what I want. He left himself no possible way of retreat. He had to win or perish. That is all there is to the Barnes story of success. A long while
Get rich
ago,
and
a
die
great
trying.
warrior faced a situation which made it necessary for him to make a decision which inspired his success on the battlefield. He was about to send his armies against a powerful foe whose men outnumbered his own. He loaded his soldiers into boats, sailed to the enemy's country, unloaded soldiers and equipment, then gave the order to burn the ships that had carried them. Addressing his men before the first battle, he said, "You see the boats going up in smoke? That means that we cannot leave these shores alive unless we win. We now have no choice. We win or we perish." They won. Every person who wins in any undertaking must be willing to burn his ships and cut all sources of retreat. Only by doing so can one be sure of maintaining that state of mind as a burning desire to win, essential to success. The morning after the Great Chicago Fire, a group of merchants stood on State Street looking at the smoking remains of what had been their stores. They went into a conference to decide if they would try to rebuild or leave Chicago and start over in a more promising section of the country. They reached a decision, all except one, to leave Chicago. The merchant who decided to stay and rebuild pointed a finger at the remains of his store and said, "Gentlemen, on that very spot I will build the world's greatest store, no matter how many times it may burn down." That was more than 50 years ago. The store was built, it stands there today, a towering monument to the power of that state of mind known as burning desire. The
I wonder
easy
what
thing
build
for
that
Marshall
is.
Field to have done would have been exactly what his fellow merchants did. When the going was hard and the future looked dismal, they pulled up and went where the going seemed easier. Mark well this difference between Marshall Field and the other merchants, because it is the same difference which distinguishes Edwin C. Barnes from thousands of other young men who have worked in the Edison organization. It is the same difference which distinguishes practically all who succeed from those who fail. Every human being who reaches the age of understanding of the purpose of money wishes for it. Wishing will not bring riches, but desiring riches with a state of mind that becomes an obsession, then planning definite ways and means to acquire riches, and backing those plans with persistence which does not recognize failure, will bring riches. The method by which desire for riches can be transmuted into its financial equivalent consists of 6 definite practical steps, viz. First, fix in your mind the exact amount of money you desire. It is not sufficient merely to say, "I want plenty of money." Be definite as to the amount. There is a psychological reason for definiteness which will be described in a subsequent chapter. Second, determine exactly what you intend to give in return for the money you desire. There is no such reality as something for nothing. Third, establish a definite date when you intend to possess the money you desire. Fourth, create a definite plan for carrying out your desire, and begin at once, whether you are ready or not, to put this plan into
Make sure you
action.
get this video a thumbs up if you're new
Fifth,
to the live.
write out a clear, concise statement of the amount of
Hit
money
that
you intend
subscribe
to
button if you
acquire.
haven't already.
Name the time limit for its acquisition. State what you intend to give in return for the money, and describe clearly the plan through which you intend to accumulate it. Sixth, read your written statement aloud twice daily, once just before retiring at night, and once after arising in the morning. As you read, see and feel and believe yourself already in possession of the money.
Keep doing it, bro. You
It is
helping a lot of
important that you
folks
follow
out.
the instructions
For sure.
described in these
Thank you
6
for tuning
steps.
in, Slam Room
It is
Station.
especially important that you observe and
Like,
follow the
I
instructions in the
understand
6th
how
paragraph.
powerful this book is.
You may
like, so,
complain that it is impossible for you to see yourself in
it
possession of
changed
money
my life, so I'm
before you
pretty sure
actually
it could
have
change
it.
somebody else.
Here is where a burning desire will come to your aid. If you truly desire money so keenly that your desire is an obsession, you will have no difficulty in convincing yourself that you will acquire it. The object is to want money and to become so determined to have it that you convince yourself you will have it. Only those who become money conscious ever accumulate great riches. Money consciousness means that the mind has become so thoroughly saturated with the desire for money that one can see one's self already in possession of it. To the uninitiated, who has not been schooled in the working principles of the human mind, these instructions may appear impractical. It may be helpful to all who fail to recognize the soundness of the 6 steps to know that the information they convey was received from Andrew Carnegie, who began as an ordinary laborer in the steel mills, but managed, despite his humble beginning, to make these principles yield himself a fortune of considerably more than $100 million. It may be a further help to know
$100 million in like Andrew Carnegie's time, like what that is today is billions. Like, and it's all mental. All this shit is mental. Like, you can have whatever the fuck you want. Like, there's nothing stopping you. It's all mind games. So me understanding like the basics of this book, like it was easy for me to like write my goals down and say, oh, I wanted to make this amount of money, and I would read my goals every single day. Except I had like 20 different goals, like, so I should have had more of a one definite goal. I guess that's why it took me a lot longer, because I had to fucking grow and understand, like, shit, you can't put too much on your plate, like, because that's how you get distracted. So right now, my definite goal is YouTube. Like, so I'm applying what I learned from Think and Grow Rich to like getting monetized on YouTube, to get a check from YouTube. Like, so it's gonna be it's easy for me to like hop on live every day, like, because this is what gives me the most watch time hours. Like, so why won't I do that? Like, when I know, like, you gotta put the work in. Like, I got a definite goal. Like, I already seen myself monetize. I see YouTube paying me millions of dollars a year, like, just to be on here. Like, so I'm gonna fucking do that shit. And then, like, I know I got other things that I've manifested or planted. I've planted different seeds, like, as far as my podcast and life coaching, like, just spirituality, like, all of that. Like, I've planted different seeds where those are now grown, and like I'm eating off that too. Like, so Think and Grow Rich is like a powerful book. Everybody need to read that shit. Everybody. I don't know why they don't put these books in a school. Like, if you gonna have me in school for 12 years, you need to help me or give me something that's for my mind. Like, that's gonna help me like protect my mind. Like, that's gonna help me think positive. School never taught you not one time about setting goals. Like, what the fuck? That's the most important thing to like a basis. Like, they don't teach you about having no plan. None of that. Like, so thank God I came across Think and Grow Rich. Like, that's why I'm like playing it for y'all, because I'm like, man, I don't know if this book affected y'all like how it affected me, or if it's like if y'all having like ideas off this book like I had ideas, like, but somebody will.
That the 6 steps here recommended were carefully scrutinized by the late Thomas A. Edison, who placed his stamp of approval upon them as being not only the steps essential for the accumulation of money, but necessary for the attainment of any definite goal. The steps call for no hard labor. They call for no sacrifice. They do not require one to become ridiculous or credulous. To apply them calls for no great amount of education. But the successful application of these 6 steps does call for sufficient imagination to enable one to see and to understand that accumulation of money cannot be left to chance, good fortune, and luck. One must realize that all who have accumulated great fortunes first did a certain amount of dreaming, hoping, wishing, desiring, and planning. before they acquire
I'm not
money.
selfish. I'm gonna give you the
You
game.
may as well know right here that you can never have riches in great quantities unless you can work yourself into a white heat of desire for money and actually believe you will possess it. You may as well know also that every great leader from the dawn of civilization down to the present was a dreamer. Christianity is the greatest potential power in the world today because its founder was an intense dreamer who had the vision and the imagination to see realities in their mental and spiritual form before they had been transmuted into
I'm
physical
definitely a
form.
dreamer.
If you do not see the great riches in your imagination, you will never see them in your bank balance. Never in the history of America has there been so great an opportunity for practical dreamers as now exists. The 6-year economic collapse has reduced all men substantially to the same level. A new race is about to be run. The stakes represent huge fortunes which will be accumulated within the next 10 years. The rules of the race have changed because we now live in a changed world that definitely favors the masses. Those who had but little or no opportunity to win under the conditions existing during the Depression, when fear paralyzed growth and
Thank
development.
you for the likes.
We who are in this race
Thank you
for
for the
riches
subscription.
should be
I mean, for
encouraged to
subs.
know
We
that
almost
this
at
changed
10K.
world in
Like,
which we
shit.
live is demanding
Thank
new
y'all.
ideas,
And it
new
took me a
ways of
while,
doing
like, to
things,
get my.
new leaders, new...
It took me a minute to get my YouTube. Like, it took persistence to finally get my shit to start growing. Like, cause I've been on it. I've been trying to get subscribed since 2017. Like, not. I haven't been this consistent. Like now, but I've been wanting to. I had it as a goal in 2017 that I wanted to get a check from YouTube. So now, 2022, like 5 years in, like my channel is now starting to grow like how I wanted it to grow in 2017. Like I was visualizing like millions of views on my channel before I had 100,000 views. I didn't crack 100,000 views until December 2021. Like now I'm at 2 million plus views. Like using the law of attraction. Like understanding the shit ain't gonna happen overnight. Even though it may happen overnight for some people, it may seem like that. It really don't because you don't know a person's true journey. You don't know how or where like they started from. Like so my channel is finally seeing light when I was stuck at 1,400 subscribers for years. Now I'm almost at 10,000. Like hey, like I believe in this shit. Like you can't tell me like this shit is wrong. You can't tell me this shit sound crazy. Like this don't want to motivate you to get rich. Like cause that's what it did for me. Like, bro, I don't know. I can't help it.
inventions, new methods of teaching, new methods of marketing, new books, new literature, new features for the radio, new ideas for moving pictures. Back of all this demand for new and better things, there is one quality which one must possess to win, and that is definiteness of purpose, the knowledge of what one wants, and a burning desire to possess it. The business depression marked the death of one age and the birth of another. This changed world requires practical dreamers who can and will put their dreams into action. The practical dreamers have always been and always will be the pattern makers of civilization. We who desire to accumulate riches should
When niggas say they don't like sleep, like they don't, it's 25/8. Nipsey used to say that. I couldn't relate to that. Like as much as I love Nipsey, I love my sleep because I'm a dreamer. I always love to dream. Like I used to think my dreams was the real world, and like this was the fake world. I still think that. Like so, if you don't have no imagination, you ain't gonna ever be rich because you don't see yourself. You don't see yourself happening. I mean, you don't see it happening. If you can't see it happen for yourself, it never will. Like so, I know this shit can happen. Like I'm telling you, I done manifested like just everything but the millions and billions. Like, but I didn't manifested a lot of shit off this book and like just listening to it every day. Like, so I probably for it's gonna take us a like few days to finish this. Like, but this is a great book. Like as you can see already, like and we only an hour in. Like it's a 9 hour book. Like so, it's gonna take some time, but I know y'all like the book because I got 19 likes for the first time. Like I ain't ever got that many likes on one of my lives. That is, like one of my videos got like I think 73,000 likes, but that's a short. Like that algorithm different. Like this shit is more organic. Like it's harder for motherfuckers to click on a live because people sometimes they don't even watch nobody else live. Like so for y'all to be in here and like chilling with me, like I really do appreciate it. Like for real. I got people from my hometown that's watching. I got people that, like that's from where I live now watching. Like shit, yeah. I got new people that just came in for the first time, like that's watching. So I really appreciate y'all for like tuning in with me. Let's get back to this book.
The real leaders of the world always have been men who harnessed and put into practical use the intangible, unseen forces of unborn opportunity, and have converted those forces, or impulses of thought, into skyscrapers, cities, factories, airplanes, automobiles, and every form of convenience that makes life more pleasant. Tolerance and an open mind are practical necessities of the dreamer of today. Those who are afraid of new ideas are doomed before they start. Never has there been a time more favorable to pioneers than the present. True, there is no wild and woolly West to be conquered as in the days of the covered wagon, but there is a vast business, financial, and industrial world to be remolded and redirected along new and better lines. In planning to acquire your share of the riches, let no one influence you to scorn the dreamer. To win the big stakes in this changed world, you must catch the spirit of the great pioneers of the past, whose dreams have given to civilization all that it has of the value, the spirit which serves as the lifeblood of our own country. Your opportunity and mine to develop and market our talents. Let us not forget, Columbus dreamed of an unknown world, staked his life on the existence of such a world, and discovered it. Copernicus, the great astronomer, dreamed of a multiplicity of worlds and revealed them. No one denounced him as impractical after he had triumphed. Instead, the world worshipped at his shrine, thus proving once more that success requires no apologies, failure permits no alibis. If the thing you wish to do is right, and you believe in it, go ahead and do it. Put your dream across, and never mind what they say if you meet with temporary defeat, for they perhaps do not know that every failure brings with it the seed of an equivalent success. Henry Ford, poor and uneducated, dreamed of a horseless carriage, went to work with what tools he possessed without waiting for opportunity to favor him, and now evidence of his dream belts the entire earth. He has put more wheels into operation than any man who ever lived, because he was not afraid to back his dreams. Thomas Edison dreamed of a lamp that could be operated by electricity, began where he stood to put his dream into action, and despite more than 10,000 failures, he stood by that dream until he made it a physical reality. Practical dreamers do not quit. Whalen dreamed of a chain of cigar stores, transformed his dream into action, and now the United Cigar Stores occupy the best corners in America. Lincoln dreamed of freedom for the black slaves, put his dream into action, and barely missed living to see a united North and South translate his dream into reality. The Wright brothers dreamed of a machine that would fly through the air. Now one may see evidence all over the world that they dreamed soundly. Marconi dreamed of a system for harnessing the intangible forces of the ether. Evidence that he did not dream in vain may be found in every wireless and radio in the world. Moreover, Marconi's dream brought the humblest cabin and the most stately manor house side by side. It made the people of every nation on earth backdoor neighbors. It gave the President of the United States a medium by which he may talk to all the people of America at one time, and on short notice. It may interest you to know that Marconi's friends had him taken into custody and examined in a psychopathic hospital when he announced he had discovered a principle through which he could send messages through the air without the aid of wire.
His friends had him like checked mentally because he had an idea that changed the world. Like people gonna think you crazy when you think like when you want to create, like when you want to do something, like when you want to be something. Like people always judging like, ah, that sounds crazy, and fuck what they think.
Other direct physical means of communication. The dreamers of today fare better. The world has become accustomed to new discoveries. Nay, it has shown a willingness to reward the dreamer who gives the world a new idea. The greatest achievement was at first, and for a time, but a dream. The oak sleeps in the acorn, the bird waits in the egg, and in the highest vision of the soul,
Make
a
sure you hit that
waking
like
angel
button if you haven't
stirs.
already hit it.
Dreams are the seedlings of reality. Awake,
really do
arise, and
appreciate
assert
it.
yourself,
It
you
helps
dreamers
this
of the
video
world.
get seen,
Your star is now in the ascendancy. The
and that
world
motivates me
depression
to
brought
keep
the
going longer.
opportunity you have been
Like,
waiting
so,
for. It taught
hit that
people
like
humility,
button.
tolerance, and open-mindedness. The world is filled with an abundance of opportunity, which the dreamers of the past never knew. A burning desire to be and to do is the starting point from which the dreamer must take off. Dreams are not born of indifference, laziness, or lack of ambition. The world no longer scoffs at the dreamer, nor calls him impractical.
It
If you
really
think
does,
it does,
though.
take a trip to Tennessee and witness what a dreamer president has done in the way of harnessing and using the great water power of America. A score of years ago, such a dream would have seemed like madness. You have been disappointed. You have undergone defeat during the Depression. You have felt the great heart within you crushed until it bled. Take courage, for these experiences have tempered the
Like,
spiritual
y'all want to
metal
give me
of
that
which
20
you are
likes.
made. They are
God,
assets of
it's just one more. I
incomparable
just need
value.
one more person to hit that
Remember,
like button.
too, that all who succeed in life get off to a bad start and pass through many.
And
The
share
turning
this
point in the
video.
lives
Like,
of those who
hey,
succeed
that.
usually comes at the moment of some
Right.
crisis through which they are introduced to their other selves. John Bunyan wrote The Pilgrim's Progress, which is among the finest of all English literature.
Hey, we got the 20
After he
likes.
had been
Appreciate
confined in
whoever
prison and
gave me
sorely
that 20th
punished
like.
because of his
I
views on
really
the subject of
appreciate you.
religion.
You
O.
a real
Henry
one. I mean,
discovered the
everybody.
genius which
Let me stop talking over the book. Not just you a real one, but anybody who came in here and chilled with your boy, you gotta be a real one, because it's Thursday night. You could be drinking, you could be sleeping, you could probably at work, like, but you chilling here with me. So, hey, and there's some game, like this free game right here. You don't know, like if you listen to this book on your own and not with me, like keep stopping it and shit. I'm telling you, this shit'll change your life. Like this book really changed my life. I had $0. I couldn't even afford to buy this book. Thank God for YouTube. Like I was able to listen to the audio book and like different other things. So Think and Grow Rich is a powerful book. Like, so make sure once y'all hop off the live, or like shit, once I end the live, I ain't about to end it right now, but make sure y'all just check out Think and Grow Rich on y'all own. Like, so if you ain't got the money to buy the audio book or buy the book, just go on YouTube and type it in, because that's what we're listening from. Like, so
within his brain. After he had met with great misfortune and was
Thank y'all for
confined
that
in a
20
prison
likes,
cell
though.
in Columbus, Ohio,
whoever the
being
20th person
forced
that hit that
through
like, make
misfortune
hey
to
comment,
become
let me know
acquainted
who
with
it
his
was.
other self and to use his imagination, he discovered himself to be a great author
I know
instead
I'm
of a
doing too
miserable
much. I'm asking
criminal
for
and
too much. You ain't got to
outcast.
comment.
Strange and varied are the ways of life, and stranger still are the ways of infinite intelligence, through which men are sometimes forced to undergo all sorts of punishment before discovering their own brains and their own capacity to create useful ideas through imagination. Edison, the world's greatest inventor and scientist, was a tramp telegraph operator. He failed innumerable times before he was driven, finally, to the discovery of the genius which slept within his brain. Charles Dickens began by pasting labels on blacking pots. The tragedy of his first love penetrated the depths of his soul and converted him into one of the world's truly great authors. That tragedy produced first David Copperfield, then a succession of other works that made this a richer and better world for all who read his books. Disappointment over love affairs generally has the effect of driving men to drink and women to ruin, and this because most people never learn the art of transmuting their strongest emotions into dreams of a constructive nature. Helen Keller
That was
became...
me. At first, I couldn't create nothing. I couldn't have no like multi-million dollar ideas because I couldn't control like my sexual urges. Like in 27, like I told, well, I don't know if you new to the chat, but before me and my wife got married, like I was like when we first started dating, I was a dog, like cause hey, I was a pretty boy, like if women was attracted to me. My brother is famous, so like I was kind of low key famous, so I I was going the wrong way, like so. But once I started listening to books like this, like that no longer became my focus. I no longer started chasing hoes, like, cause that's all I was doing was chasing hoes, and I was able to manifest me some money, and manifest the life that I wanted for myself and my family. So, sexual transmit fuck, I don't want to mess up the word, like. Let them talk
dumb
it.
and blind shortly after birth. Despite her greatest misfortune, she has written her name indelibly in the pages of the history of the great. Her entire life has served as evidence that no one ever is defeated until defeat has been accepted as a reality. Robert Burns was an illiterate country lad. He was cursed by poverty and grew up to be a drunkard in the bargain. The world was made better for his having lived because he clothed beautiful thoughts in poetry, and thereby plucked a thorn and planted a rose in its place. Booker T. Washington was born in slavery, handicapped by race and color. Because he was tolerant, had an open mind at all times on all subjects, and was a dreamer, he left his impress for good on an entire race.
I like that he mentioned Booker T. Washington. That shows you like Napoleon Hill wasn't a racist dude, like cause he only listed like the top people. No matter what race you was, no matter you're Chinese, white. He's a white dude, like, but he's mentioning Booker T. Washington in his book. Like, this is the early 1900s, so the richest people they not racist. Like, they not racist. It's crazy about, but then you got them quote unquote KKK or white. I ain't gonna even call them white supremacy because why would I give them that? Nah, that white idiocracy. Like they not rich. They not wealthy. Yeah, motherfuckers in high places, they at least want shit to stay how it is, but they not stopping you from getting rich. They not stopping you from like getting living the life you want to live. Like this shit is free. Like, and you can have whatever it is you want to have. Like, you can live the life you want to live. Don't let nobody or nothing stop you. That's what this book is about. You can start with nothing, have nothing, and create something for yourself. So.
Beethoven was deaf. Milton was blind. But their names will last as long as time endures because they dreamed and translated their dreams into organized thought. Before passing to the next chapter, kindle anew in your mind the fire of hope, faith, courage, and tolerance. If you have these states of mind and a working knowledge of the principles described, all else that you need will come to you when you are ready for it. Let Emerson state the thought in these words: every proverb, every book, every byword that belongs to thee for aid and comfort shall surely come home through open or winding passages. Every friend whom not thy fantastic will, but the great and tender soul in thee craveth, shall lock thee in his embrace. There is a difference between wishing for a thing and being ready to receive it.
I guess
no one is ready for a thing until he believes he can acquire it. The state of mind must be belief, not mere hope or wish. Open-mindedness is essential for belief. Closed minds do not inspire faith, courage, and belief. Remember, no more effort is required to aim high in life, to demand abundance and prosperity, than is required to accept misery and poverty. A great poet has correctly stated this universal truth through these lines. I bargained with life for a penny,
somebody give me some
and
water,
life would
please?
pay no more. However, I begged at evening when I counted my scanty store. For life is a just employer. He gives you what you ask. But once you have set the wages, why, you must bear the task. I worked for a menial's hire, only to learn, dismayed, that any wage I had asked of life, life would have willingly paid. Desire outwits Mother Nature. As a fitting climax to this chapter, I wish to introduce one of the most unusual persons I have ever known. I first saw him 24 years ago, a few minutes after he was born. He came into the world without any physical sign of ears, and the doctor admitted, when pressed for an opinion, that the child might be deaf and mute for life. I challenged the doctor's opinion. I had the right to do so. I was the child's father. I, too, reached a decision and rendered an opinion, but I expressed the opinion silently in the secrecy of my own heart. I decided that my son would hear and speak. Nature could send me a...
And not one kid moved. You
So it's showing you, I mean, well, in this part, he's saying, like, the first unusual person he met was his son, because his son was born without ears. And when the doctor was like, he'd be a deaf, he'd be a retard, or I don't think he said retard, but he'd be a deaf or mute, or not mute because he could talk, but he would be handicapped. Napoleon Hill was like, nah, that ain't the case. But he didn't state that out loud for the simple fact that motherfuckers was gonna call him crazy. Like, nah, he don't have no ears. So how you think they would have said there's no absolutely way he'd ever hear? Like, but they a doctor, but him knowing, thinking positive, like knowing like it's all mental, like it will happen. He will hear one day. Like, I'm kind of telling a story, like, so let me stop and just continue the book.
Child without ears, but nature could not induce me to accept the reality of the affliction. In my own mind, I knew that my son would hear and speak. How? I was sure there must be a way, and I knew I would find it. I thought of the words of the immortal Emerson. The whole course of things goes to teach us faith. We need only obey. There is guidance for each of us, and by lowly listening, we shall hear the right word. The right word? Desire. More than anything else, I desired that my son should not be a deaf mute. From that desire, I never receded, not for a second. Many years previously, I had written, "Our only limitations are those we set up in our own minds." For the first time, I wondered if that statement were true. Lying on the bed in front of me was a newly born child without the natural equipment of hearing. Even though he might hear and speak, he was obviously disfigured for life. Surely this was a limitation which that child had not set up in his own mind. What could I do about it? Somehow I would find a way to transplant into that child's mind my own burning desire for ways and means of conveying sound to his brain without the aid of ears.
If you do
As
to
soon
the
as the
chat,
child was
make
old
sure
enough
you
to
hit that thumbs
cooperate,
up button.
I would fill his mind so completely
haven't
with a
already
burning
subscribed
desire
to
to
the channel,
hear
I really
that
would
nature
appreciate
would,
that.
by methods of her
Trying to
own,
hit that
translate it
10K
into
before
physical
my birthday
reality.
next month. So
All this thinking took place in my own mind, but I spoke of it to no one. Every day I renewed the pledge I had made to myself, not to accept a deaf mute for a son. As he grew older and began to take notice of things around him, we observed that he had a slight degree of hearing. When he reached the age when children usually begin talking, he made no attempt to speak, but we could tell by his actions that he could hear certain sounds slightly. That was all I wanted to know. I was convinced that if he could hear even slightly, he might develop still greater hearing capacity. Then something happened which gave me hope. It came from an entirely unexpected source. We bought a Victrola. When the child heard the music for the first time, he went into ecstasies and promptly appropriated the machine. He soon showed a preference for certain records, among them It's a Long Way to Tipperary. On one occasion, he played that piece over and over for almost 2 hours, standing in front of the Victrola with his teeth clamped on the edge of the case. The significance of this self-formed habit of his did not become clear to us until years afterward, for we had never heard of the principle of bone conduction of sound at that time. Shortly after he appropriated the Victrola, I discovered that he could hear me quite clearly when I spoke with my lips touching his mastoid bone, or at the base of the brain. These discoveries placed in my possession the necessary media by which I began to translate into reality my burning desire to help my son develop hearing and speech. By that time, he was making stabs at speaking certain words. The outlook was far from encouraging, but desire backed by faith knows no such words as impossible. Having determined that he could hear the sound of my voice plainly, I began immediately to transfer to his mind the desire to hear and speak. I soon discovered that the child enjoyed bedtime stories, so I went to work, creating stories designed to develop in him self-reliance, imagination, and a keen desire to hear and to be normal. There was one story in particular which I emphasized by giving it some new and dramatic coloring each time it was told. It was designed to plant in his mind the thought that his affliction was not a liability, but an asset of great value. Despite the fact that all the philosophy I had examined clearly indicated that every adversity brings with it the seed of an equivalent advantage, I must confess that I had not the slightest idea how this affliction could ever become an asset. However, I continued my practice of wrapping that philosophy in bedtime stories, hoping the time would come when he would find some plan by which his handicap could be made to serve some useful purpose. Reason told me plainly that there was no adequate compensation for the lack of ears and natural hearing equipment. Desire, backed by faith, pushed reason aside and inspired me to carry on. As I analyze the experience in retrospect, I can see now that my son's faith in me had much to do with the astounding results. He did not question anything I told him. I sold him the idea that he had a distinct advantage over his older brother, and that this advantage would reflect itself in many ways. For example, the teachers in school would observe that he had no ears, and because of this, they would show him special attention and treat him with extraordinary kindness. They always did. His mother saw to that by visiting the teachers and arranging with them to give the child the extra attention necessary. I sold him the idea, too, that when he became old enough to sell newspapers, his older brother had already become a newspaper merchant, he would have a big advantage over his brother for the reason that people would pay him extra money for his wares because they could see that he was a bright, industrious boy despite the fact that he had no ears.
They was training their son from the beginning. Like, you gonna hear, like, you can hear, you can speak. Like, even if he was born with no ears, and the doctor said he'd never hear. But Napoleon Hill was like, nah, that ain't the case. Like, he thought it into existence. That's what the Think and Grow Rich is about. It's not always about money. Like, it's about creating the life you really want to live. Believing, having true belief and faith, like, life will work out in your favor. Like, you can get whatever it is you want out of this life. You don't have to settle for nothing as long as you're willing to work for what you want.
Notice that gradually the child's hearing was improving. Moreover, he had not the slightest tendency to be self-conscious because of his affliction. When he was about 7, he showed the first evidence that our method of servicing his mind was bearing fruit. For several months he begged for the privilege of selling newspapers, but his mother would not give her consent. She was afraid that his deafness made it unsafe for him to go on the street alone. Finally, he took matters into his own hands. One afternoon, when he was left at home with the servants, he climbed through the kitchen window, shinnied to the ground and set out on his own. He borrowed 6 cents in capital from the neighborhood shoemaker, invested it in papers, sold out, reinvested, and kept repeating until late in the evening.
He was investing in himself and reinvesting the money he made off the newspaper. This a kid. Like, that's because his dad is Napoleon Hill. He knows about the mindset. He knows it's all mental. Not you can have everything. Like, man, what I listened to this for the first time, and I'm like, my life gotta change. I'm not about to stay the same. Like, cause before I was poor. Like, even though I didn't grow up poor, I grew up kind of in the we wasn't wealthy, we wasn't rich, but we was like middle class, like just in my household. Like, so after I joined the military at 18, I had money up until like 22. Then once I got out the military, I was basically on my own. I was in a marriage that I didn't want to be in. I was in a city and state I didn't really want to be in, and like I ain't had no type of goals. I ain't had no type of ambition. So I got poor. Like, I was poor. I lost my car, got evicted. Like, had to live in the trailer. I was living in the trailer homes, bro. Like, for years. Like, and then like in 2015, my great grandmother passed, and she's the one who raised me. So I went back to Indiana, and that's when I changed. I started like fixing myself. Not all. I mean, I came back in 2015, but I ain't get to this level thinking, well, shit, till now. Like, but in 2015, I was still going down the wrong path. I was only chasing, think about girls, getting money, like. But I ain't had no type of goal. Like, I thought I had a good paying job, making like $12 an hour as a cook. I probably wasn't even making 12. I probably was making like $10, 10.80 when I came back to Gary, and that was the most I ever made working at a job besides the military. So I did that for a year. I quit. I ended up being a truck and getting my CDL license. So that didn't work out, but I was still making a lot of like more money like than I had ever made in my life before then. Like, so that lasted 3 months before I got fired. Then I went back to like my old job, but I became a dealer. Like, then around that time, I'm making like it wasn't no set pay. Like, so I was averaging around like $18 an hour. Like, and this is around 2017. Like, so all of this is before I learned about Napoleon Hill, Think and Grow Rich, the Law of Attraction, any of that. Like, so I had a mindset to like get money, but it wasn't to get millions, like to get like wealthy. I ain't had no goal to get like be rich. Like, so I ain't even had no vision. I ain't even had no idea how that was gonna happen. I was seeing my brothers get wealthy and get rich, but I'm like, damn, like what the fuck? What am I supposed to do? Like, so when I learned about this, I moved to Las Vegas, and like I just started going like diving deeper and deeper and deeper into like Think and Grow Rich, like The Strangest Secret, Confessions with the Devil. That's another book by Napoleon Hill that I want to listen to. Like, that's a deep book. Like, all his books is deep. Like, but it's the same message. Like, this shit is mental. You can have whatever it is you want. Like,
After balancing his accounts and paying back the 6 cents he had borrowed from his banker, he had a net profit of 42 cents. When he got home that night, we found him in bed asleep with the money tightly clenched in his hand. His mother opened his hand, removed the coins, and cried. Of all things, crying over her son's first victory seemed so inappropriate. My reaction was the reverse. I laughed heartily, for I knew that my endeavor to plant in the child's mind an attitude of faith in himself had been successful. His mother saw, in his first business venture, a little deaf boy who had gone out in the streets and risked his life to earn money. I saw a boy.
is y'all gonna let a little deaf boy mute get more money than you? Like, create the life that he want? But him, you gonna let him outdo you? Well, he dead now, but still. Moral of the story, like this kid was deaf, was a mute. Doctor said he'd never hear. But by the time he's like 10 years old, like he's making money. He got his own business, like, and he's now just developing being able to hear because his dad was like, "You're gonna hear." Like so, he trained his son not to ever feel subconsciously like negative about how he was born or anything like got special privileges. That kind of sound like me. But I didn't have. I wasn't deaf. I had ears. I could hear, but I was a quiet kid. Like so, that my teacher showed me extra like attention because everybody else was loud and like crazy. Well, man, I ain't gonna say crazy, but in elementary, them kids, you know how kids is. Like so, I got showed special attention because I was super quiet and I was acting the opposite of my classmates. So I always kind of felt privileged. Like even though I grew up in the hood, like I said, my grandma and my Gigi, they was kind of like set, like middle class. My Gigi was retired, but she kept like thousands of dollars, like just on her. Like even when she wasn't working, had her own bill. My grandma always had at least two jobs. Always was hustling, like doing something. Stayed at the casino. I guess that was her downfall. But like I was raised in a household with money. Like, but they didn't value like name brand clothes. So growing up, I didn't think we was set. Even though we was always going out of town, even though like we was always eating at different restaurants, like I didn't register that as a kid, like that we had money because I was looking on TV seeing the like watching Home Alone, like damn, they got money, like so growing up, you always comparing yourself to the world around you because I didn't have a dad like Napoleon Hill teaching me like, hey, stay focused. Like you can have whatever it is you want if you work for it. Like if you believe it's gonna happen, if you think it will come.
Ambitious, self-reliant little businessman whose stock in himself had been increased 100% because he had gone into business on his own initiative and had won. The transaction pleased me because I knew that he had given evidence of a trait of resourcefulness that would go with him all through
Man,
life.
imagine all like just.
Later events proved that
My bad for keep interrupting the book, but just imagine like how white people is with their kids, like the wealthy ones, the ones who kids go to Harvard, Princeton, like they're from get the time their child are born, they're training them like not to follow how the traps we fall into. Like so, they got a head start because they got the secret. They know the secret. Like all them people that's in high places know about this Think and Grow Rich. Like follow this shit. Believe it's they know it's not God. It ain't no devil. None of that. It ain't none. It's all mental. Like so, as long as they can keep the majority of the world asleep, then like, hey, I'm not trying to wake people up. I just love this book so much, and like it gives me ideas. So I'm like, should I go share it? I ain't trying to be reading those books like um, about black people and shit. Like I've never been into those type of books. I've always been into like self help books, like fantasy books. I love Harry Potter. Love the Hunger Game books. Percy Jackson. I didn't read like that's Percy Jackson books. Got probably a total like 10 books that I done read every single last one of them. But now I only read self help books. I mean now, not just now, but recently I have been like reading like more fantasy, hood novels and shit. But that should be like too negative. Like reading them type of books, like shit. But if you got time in throughout your day, like you should be like listening to shit like this, like listening to Think and Grow Rich, listening to The Stranger Secret. It's all on YouTube. It's all free. It's all accessible. And once I like when I was on YouTube and I was just running across these videos, I just started watching all the videos that was on the side. Like I just started watching all the videos like that was suggested to me. So like anything that was on that roll, like I watched every single last one of them videos. When I started meditating, I would just watch the next meditation after I was done. Like I was trying to heal myself. I was trying to not trying. I did heal myself. I did brainwash myself to think positive. Like to know I can have anything that I want in this world. Like most people, they don't know that. But like I said, you get everything you want. May not get it on the first time. It may not come when you want it. But eventually, you get everything you ask for.
To be true. When his older brother wanted something, he would lie on the floor, kick his feet in the air, cry for it, and get it. When the little deaf boy wanted something, he would plan a way to earn the money, then buy it for himself. He still follows that plan. Truly, my own son has taught me that handicaps can be converted into stepping stones on which one may climb towards some worthy goal, unless they are accepted as obstacles and used as alibis. The little deaf boy went through the grades, high school and college, without being able to hear his teachers, excepting when they shouted loudly at close range. He did not go to a school for the deaf. We would not permit him to learn the sign language. We were determined that he should live a normal life and associate with normal children, and we stood by that decision, although it cost us many heated debates with school officials. While he was in high school, he tried an electrical hearing aid, but it was of no value to him, due, we believed, to a condition that was disclosed when the child was 6 by Dr. J. Gordon Wilson of Chicago, when he operated on one side of the boy's head and discovered that there was
If you're
no
new to the
sign of
chat, make
natural
sure you
hearing
give this video a
equipment.
thumbs up. I really
During his
appreciate it.
last week in college, 18 years after the
I got
operation,
21 likes. That's a record.
something happened
Like,
which marked the most
for
important
sure.
turning point of his life. Through what seemed to be mere chance, he came into possession of another electrical hearing device, which was sent to him on trial. He was slow about testing it due to his disappointment with a similar device. Finally, he picked the instrument up and more or less carelessly placed it on his head, hooked up the battery, and lo, as if by a stroke of magic, his lifelong desire for normal hearing became a reality. For the first time in his life, he heard practically as well as any person with normal hearing. God moves in mysterious ways, his wonders to perform. Overjoyed because of the changed world which had been brought to him through his hearing device, he rushed to the telephone, called his mother, and heard her voice perfectly. The next day, he plainly heard the voices of his professors in class for the first time in his life. Previously, he could hear them only when they shouted at short range. He heard the radio. He heard the talking pictures. For the first time in his life, he could converse freely with other people without the necessity.
I wonder, did that hearing now give him a handicap? Because now you got all these, you hearing all these distractions. Like at first, when he was deaf, like the goal was like get money. Like that's the only goal he had. Like, of course, get through school, but you could tell he was built to like start to get money. Napoleon Hill had his son like at a business mindset. That's how I teach my kids. Like I let them know, hey, you want to just work a 9 to 5 your whole life from the time you 18 or sometimes 16 until you 70 and then trying to retire and like don't got shit to your name. Like how many older people you know like that? I know one. I know at least one person that's like that. Like so I'm training my kids to think like how Napoleon Hill got his kids thinking like you can have whatever it is you want. If you want to be a my daughter want to be an astronaut, what you think I'm gonna do? If my one of my kids want to be a president, what you think I'm gonna do? I'm gonna train them to go down that path, like because I understand the power of thinking positive. Like I said, this book really helped me.
Of their
I don't know
having
if
to
it's y'all
speak
like it.
loudly. Truly, he had come into possession of a changed world. We had refused to accept nature's error, and by persistent desire we had induced nature to correct that error through the only practical means available. Desire had commenced to pay dividends, but the victory was not yet complete. The boys still had to find a definite and practical way to convert this handicap into an equivalent asset. Hardly realizing the significance of what had already been accomplished, but intoxicated with the joy of his newly discovered world of sound, he wrote a letter to the manufacturer of the hearing aid, enthusiastically describing his experience. Something in his letter, something perhaps which was not written on the lines, but back of them, caused the company to invite him to New York. When he arrived, he was escorted through the factory, and while talking with the chief engineer, telling him about his changed world, a hunch, an idea, or an inspiration, call it what you wish, flashed into his mind.
When you think about this story, this is in the 1930s, 1940s, when at first they didn't have no type of devices for when somebody had no ears, couldn't hear, and was a mute. Like the doctors was off the back said he's not going to hear, but Napoleon Hill, a positive thinking person, said my son will hear. Like he will have that experience, and by the time he's in high school, guess what? He finally gets to hear. Like so, I wonder like I wish I could have not been there. Like, 'cause shit. I mean, I was here my last past life. I was here in the 1920s, but it was a whole different setting for me. I wasn't rich, so, but I did have my obstacles that I overcame and became this great person. So, hey, shout out to Napoleon Hill. Shout out to me. Like, but let's continue this book.
It was this impulse of thought which converted his affliction into an asset, destined to pay dividends in both money and happiness to
Shout out to that last
thousands for
person who
all
just
time
liked
to
the
come.
video. I really appreciate
The
it.
sum and substance of that impulsive thought was this. It occurred to him that he might be of help to the millions of deafened people who go through life without the benefit of hearing devices if he could find a way to tell them the story of his changed world. Then and there, he reached a decision to devote the remainder of his life to rendering useful service to the hard of hearing. For an entire month, he carried on an intensive research during which he analyzed the entire marketing system of the manufacture of the hearing device and created ways and means of communicating with the hard of hearing all over the world for the purpose of sharing with them his newly discovered, changed world. When this was done, he put in writing a
I guess
2-year
after I
plan based
smoke this
upon his
blunt,
findings.
that's when I'm
When
gonna
he
end the
presented the
live.
plan to the company,
Like,
he was instantly
shout
given a
out to Kendrick
position for the
Edwards.
purpose of carrying
Hey,
out his
Kendrick is my
ambition.
son's middle name.
Little did he dream when he went to work that he was destined to bring hope and practical relief to thousands of deafened people who,
I know you
without
gave
his
me that
help, would
thumbs
have been
up, so
doomed
shout out to
forever to
you.
deaf mutism.
Come in and listen to Think and Grow
Shortly
Rich
after
with
he
me.
became associated with the manufacturer of his hearing aid, he invited me to attend a class conducted by his company for the purpose of teaching deaf mutes to hear and to speak. I had never heard of such a form of education. Therefore, I visited the class, skeptical but hopeful that my time would not be entirely wasted. Here I saw a demonstration which gave me a greatly
I need
enlarged vision of what I had
my
done to
lives to have at
arouse and
least
keep
1,000
alive in my
people in
son's
here,
mind the
like just
desire for
soaking in
normal
knowledge
hearing.
and like us
I
listening to
saw
different
deaf
books. Like,
mutes actually being
I know
taught
that's
to
gonna
hear
happen.
and to
Like,
speak through
my
application.
goal is for this year to at least have at least 1,000 people in my life at all times. Like so, thinking of when I re-listen to Think and Grow Rich, it just gives me like all the extra energy and power I know like to manifest what I want. And like shit, the reason why I say I only need 1,000, cause shit, if I got 1,000 people in my life before I'm monetized, like before I get my 4,000 watch time hours, all I gotta do is like one live for an hour, like 2 hours, 3 hours, I'd be good. Like, and then just capitalize off. I like that, but yeah, the goal is to have at least 1,000 people in my live. I'm about to accomplish my goal to hit 10K subscribers probably tomorrow or the next day. So the next goal is gonna be 15K, but I'm not gonna rush it. That's the whole thing. Like I ain't rushing shit. Like I know what's coming.
The self-same principle I had used more than 20 years previously in saving my son from deaf mutism. Thus, through some strange turn of the wheel of fate, my son Blair and I have been destined to aid in correcting deaf mutism for those as yet unborn, because we are the only living human beings, as far as I know, who have established definitely the fact that deaf mutism can be corrected to the extent of restoring to normal life those who suffer with this affliction. It has been done for one, it will be done for others. There is no doubt in my mind that Blair would have been a deaf mute all his life if his mother and I had not managed to shape his mind as we did. The doctor who attended at his birth told us confidently the child might never hear or speak. A few weeks ago, Dr. Irving Voorhees, a noted specialist on such cases, examined Blair very thoroughly. He was astounded when he learned how well my son now hears and speaks, and said his examination indicated that, theoretically, the boy should not be able to hear at all. But the lad does hear, despite the fact that X-ray pictures show there is no opening in the skull whatsoever from where his ears should be to the brain. When I planted in his mind the desire to hear and talk and live as a normal person, there went with that impulse some strange influence which caused nature to become a bridge builder and span the gulf of silence between his brain and the outer world by some means which the keenest medical specialists have not been able to interpret. It would be sacrilege for me to even conjecture as to how nature performed this miracle. It would be unforgivable if I neglected to tell the world as much as I know of the humble part I assumed in the strange experience. It is my duty and a privilege to say I believe, and not without reason, that nothing is impossible to the person who backs desire with enduring faith. Verily, a burning desire has devious ways of transmuting itself into its physical equivalent. Blair desired normal hearing. Now he has it. He was born with a handicap which might easily have sent one with a less defined desire to the street with a bundle of pencils and a tin cup. That handicap now promises to serve as the medium by which he will render useful service to many millions of hard of hearing.
When he get tired of hearing motherfuckers, all he gotta do is take out that hearing aid. Like, yep, I ain't got time for this shit. Like, it wasn't like that was attached to his body. Like, with the fact that he went from not having ears at all, and to know, like, this is a real story. This ain't no fantasy book we listen to. This is a real fucking story. Like, so that gave me the motivation to get anything I wanted. We only in chapter 2 of this book. Like, just imagine, like, it's fucking 13 chapters of, like, just different stories and different people of the richest people who overcame shit when times were shit. They ain't have a hearing aid when his son was a firstborn. But how did Napoleon Hill know he would hear one day? Because of his belief, his imagination. Like, your imagination is not blocked. Like, whatever you think, like, I'm telling you, it will happen. It will come true. Like, you just gotta have true beliefs. Don't let nobody tell you nothing. Like, if Napoleon Hill, like you said, if him and his wife didn't train his son's mind to think that he would hear one day, he would have never heard. Like,
So to give him useful employment at adequate financial compensation the remainder of his life. The little white lies I planted in his mind when he was a child by leading him to believe his affliction would become a great asset, which he could capitalize, has justified itself. Verily, there is nothing right or wrong which belief plus burning desire cannot make real. These qualities are free to everyone. In all of my experience in dealing with men and women who had personal problems, I never handled a single case which more definitely demonstrates the power of desire. Authors sometimes make the mistake of writing of subjects of which they have but superficial or very elementary knowledge. It has been my good fortune to have had the privilege of testing the soundness of the power of desire through the affliction of my own son. Perhaps it was providential that the experience came as it did, for surely no one is better prepared than he to serve as an example of what happens when desire is put to the test. If Mother Nature bends to the will of desire, is it logical that mere men can defeat burning desire? Strange and imponderable is the power of the human mind. We do not understand the method by which it uses every circumstance, every individual, every physical thing within its reach as a means of transmuting desire into its physical counterpart. Perhaps science will uncover this secret. I planted in my son's mind the desire to hear and to speak as any normal person hears and speaks. That desire has now become a reality. I planted in his mind the desire to convert his greatest handicap into his greatest asset. That desire has been realized. The modus operandi by which this astounding result was achieved is not hard to describe. It consisted of 3 very definite facts. First, I mixed faith with the desire for normal hearing, which I passed on to my son. Second, I communicated my desire to him in every conceivable way available, through persistent, continuous effort over a period of years. Third, he believed me. As this chapter was being completed, news came of the death of Madame Schumann Heink. One short paragraph in the news dispatch gives the clue to this unusual woman's stupendous success as a singer.
My blunt is almost going
I
out.
quote the paragraph because the clue
Hopefully
it
we can make it
contains
to
is none
2
other
hours.
than desire.
I only did 2 hours.
Early in her career,
actually,
Madame
the other
Schumann
day
Heink visited the
2 hours.
director of the Vienna Court Opera to have him test her voice. But he did not test it. After taking one look at the awkward and poorly dressed girl, he exclaimed none too gently, "With such a face and with no personality at all, how can you ever expect to succeed in opera? My good child, give up the idea, buy a sewing machine and go to work. You can never be a singer." Never is a long time. The director of the Vienna Court Opera knew much about the technique of singing. He knew little about the power of desire when it assumes the proportion of obsession.
Tonight. Shout out for you.
If he had known more of that power, he would not have made the mistake of condemning genius without giving it an
Even though my
opportunity.
blunt went out, shit.
Several years
I
ago,
love
one of
this
my
book so
business
much, like I
associates
go for
became
another
ill.
hour.
He
Honestly.
became worse as
But,
time went
like,
on and finally was taken to
something
the
may tell
hospital
me
for
that
an
you
operation.
don't need to continue to go.
Just before he was wheeled into the operating room,
If y'all continue
took
to
a
get
look
his
at him
mug a thumbs
and
up,
wondered how
I'm definitely
anyone
gonna
as
stay
thin
longer.
and emaciated
That's
as
off
he
the bat,
could
like, so.
possibly go through a major operation successfully.
I hit
The
25
doctor
lights.
warned
I
me that
probably
there was
do
little,
another
if any, chance of my
25
ever seeing him alive again. But that was the doctor's opinion.
Texas,
It was not the
shit.
opinion of the patient.
Texas
Just
has
before
been
he was
popping up a
wheeled
lot for
away,
me
he
lately.
whispered,
Once again, I don't want to talk over the book, but Texas have been popping up a lot. So I realized Texas fuck with me. If I was to ever move somewhere else, it'd be in Texas. Like, for real. I only visited like twice, but both times I went, I loved it. So unless Texas snows, like I ain't going nowhere it snows. Like fuck that shit. I like it can get cold, yeah, that's cool, 40 degrees, but when it start hitting them freezing weathers, fuck that shit. I'm out.
"Do not be disturbed, Chief. I will be out of here in a few days." The attending nurse looked at me with pity, but the patient did come through safely. After it was all over, his physician said, "Nothing but his own desire to live saved him. He never would have pulled through it if he had not refused to accept the possibility of death." I believe in the power of desire backed by faith because I have seen this power lift men from lowly beginnings to places of power and wealth. I have seen it rob the grave of its victims. I have seen it serve as the medium by which men staged a comeback after having been defeated in 100 different ways. I have seen it provide my own son with a normal, happy.
See, when he said he said, like, people were like, well, how did you know, like, what he was said was true? Like, I resonated with the message. And once again, like I said, my brother had said something about the law of attraction. So he didn't mention Think and Grow Rich. I don't even think he read Think and Grow Rich yet, but like that was just the next thing that popped up for me. Like, so I seen my brother manifesting the life he wanted to live. Felt like something just stabbed me in my finger. Like, but I seen my brother manifest the life he wanted to live, so I had proof right there. Like, I can go get it. Like, most people, they was like, they don't have that proof. They probably only see it on TV and they're like, well, I can't get on TV. I can't do what that person is doing, but I didn't have that beliefs. Like, so I already had like proof that the law of attraction works. So me, it's my 2 hour mark. Like, so I didn't got my sign to get off. Um, See y'all tomorrow. Probably see tomorrow morning or early. I'm West Coast time, so shit. It be afternoon by the time like I hop on live, and it still be morning here. So it's like for but other people, different time zones. So thank you guys for tuning in. We're gonna continue with Think and Grow Rich, like, cause hey, this is now my most liked live video like that I did consistently. So hey, dances tonight. Shout out to you for continue to comment, continue to keep the conversation going. Like I hope y'all enjoyed this book because this really is a great book to listen to. Like not just with me, but if you got time for yourself, check out Think and Grow Rich on YouTube. It don't matter which book you click on, which video you click on. Like just click one. So love you guys. Peace. I'm out.